All right, thanks for tuning in. Save America, vote Tulsi Gabbard. My name is Dave. I've got an article here. I think it's really important to kind of read through this article to understand where Tulsi Gabbard is when it comes to her viewpoints. Because I keep hearing that she's way out of the mainstream, and especially her anti-war, anti-interventionalist stance. And I had to kind of do a little refresher on what our founding fathers believed, what the Great Rule is and so forth, and when that became something that we weren't going to follow anymore. And this is an article written on July 4th of 2016. So we're running up to the election with Donald Trump on the campaign trail and Hillary Clinton. And it says, people who don't get heard have a tendency to shout. Eventually they get mad. For too long, foreign policy experts have stuck their fingers in their ears when confronted by citizens ambivalent about playing global police officer. The reason I have decided to support Tulsi Gabbard as the best candidate running is this paragraph here. Eventually they get mad. For too long, foreign policy experts have stuck their fingers in their ears, like this, just going, I can't hear you. What? You want less war? We're spending trillions of dollars on war? Nobody's listening. Okay? That's why, a lot of people think, say, Code Pink, for instance, is a real fringe left-wing outfit. On foreign policy, I don't think so. I mean, they may stick up for some other things I don't agree with, or I don't, share the passion they have for other topics, but for anti-war sentiment, much like Peter Lavelle over on RT, I might have to wear a pink shirt for one of my videos here. Okay, so it goes on here. It says, Republican Donald Trump is channeling their voices through his electronic bullhorn, whipping up the crowd and questioning the validity of institutions like NATO. Regardless of whether one likes the messenger, it's time to listen as we honor the nation's 240th birthday. Now, you notice that this is the Los Angeles Times. All right, probably not the most Republican-friendly outfit here, or conservative newspaper. And they acknowledge that you may not like Donald Trump, but what he's talking about here, and this is when he was campaigning, since the campaign ended, we have now met a new Donald Trump who is, reminiscent of a song by The Who, meet your new boss, same as the old boss. And so let's read on. Trump is right when he claims that a policy that looks out for America first is based on a timeless principle. When George Washington penned his famous farewell address of 1796, he asked his Revolutionary War comrade Alexander Hamilton to edit the speech. Hamilton crystallized the president's sentiment against foreign entanglements, then shared by most, into what's known as the Great Rule. Interweaving our destiny with others, Washington and Hamilton argued, would entangle our peace and prosperity in the toils of European ambition, rivalship, interest, humor, or caprice. America should therefore pursue economic integration with the world, but maintain strict neutrality in its feuds. This is why the Libertarian Party, by the way, finished in third place in the last election, despite having a candidate who knew nothing about Aleppo. Just throwing that in there. John Quincy Adams reiterated this principle on July 4th, 1821, when he reminded Congress that America goes not abroad in search of monsters to destroy. She is the well-wisher to the freedom and independence of all. She is the champion and vindicator only of her own. At the start of the Cold War, President Harry Truman proposed a new great rule to replace the old. Like Washington, Truman had public opinion behind him. Following a vigorous debate, the U.S. Congress accepted Truman's contention that it was imperative to support free peoples who are resisting attempted subjugation by armed minorities or by outside pressures. Citizens agreed that it was the United States' job to defend the so-called free world alone if necessary. Anything less was deemed un-American. Decision-makers stoked this sentiment to forestall isolationism. They encouraged Manichean thinking to scare the hell out of the American people, as Senator Arthur Vandenberg put it. The Truman Doctrine meant global military assistance on a scale never before seen. Since 1947, America has fought more foreign wars than any other nation. It maintains large permanent bases throughout Europe and Asia. As a former Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton knows the Truman Doctrine fostered a safer world. She advocates staying the course, preferred by establishment Democrats and Republicans, arguing that change will result in chaos. Yet, the conditions that gave rise to the doctrine no longer exist as citizens intuit. Europe and Asia have rebuilt. Territorial invasions on a continental scale have vanished. Physical conflict between nations has plummeted since 1947, and the U.S. is no longer the sole prosperous country in a world bankrupted by war. Meanwhile, Americans continue doing a grubby security job that leaves many feeling tired and dirty. Now, they go on to talk about how Ron Paul called for closing military bases, how Bernie Sanders said that America should not be the policeman of the world. These ideas are very exciting to Americans who see the cause of our national debt and the cause of things like homelessness and inferior health care and inferior education. The cause of all those things. Now, look, you can say, let's just throw money at the problem and it will fix it. In some cases, yeah, you do. You need more funding. You need money. You can't just wish the problems away. But as I read this, it's very clear that even in 2016, even an article from the LA Times, there's no question that Tulsi Gabbard is onto something. That when you go back to the first paragraph and you hear about, well, it's not the first paragraph, but it's right at the beginning of this article where it talks about, yeah, it's the first paragraph. For too long, foreign policy experts have stuck their fingers in their ears when confronted by citizens ambivalent about playing global police officer. Now here comes this candidate. She's had experience as a soldier, which, if you look at the arc of her public service, she wanted to help after 9/11. She figured, hey, we need to go get the bad guys. So she agreed to go, and then, of course, our mission changed. We were going to a country that wasn't responsible for 9/11. And we know it's a fact. Iraq had nothing to do with 9/11. And there was no link between Osama bin Laden and Saddam Hussein. There's no link. But yet we went, and Tulsi went, and she learned. And she came back and said, the cost of this is too high. And this is something that's non-negotiable for her. It's not like she's going to, and this is why they're afraid of her getting anywhere near power, because she would bring the troops home. She has said at town hall events, and I just watched another snippet from one she did a while ago, where someone asked her, what would you do on your first day? And her response was, I'd begin to bring the troops home. I think she's serious. I take her at her word. Now, why would I take her at her word and maybe I wouldn't take someone else at their word? Because she's relentless. She uses terminology like neoconservative and neoliberal, neocons and neolibs. Probably half the country doesn't even know what a neocon or a neolib is. Tulsi Gabbard knows. And she's ready to take action. And the military-industrial complex is scared to death of her taking action. The news media, for some reason, they've all been trained that war is good. War is good for business. War is good for the news industry. Hey, we can send all of these correspondents out there to cover the war. Obviously, military contractors are excited, and the country gets to watch a real, actual drama play itself out on TV every day. And it's sad that it has come to this. You know, I do watch a lot of television at night. It's the kind of thing I do to unwind, and it's stuff like NCIS or SWAT, shows that are military in nature. And the more I watch these shows, the more I realize that the whole television industry is wrapped itself around the warfare state. They love glorifying all of these activities. I mean, courage and bravery and chivalry and all of those things, you know, they're decent human virtues, but it's sad that we have to keep using them in this way. Because real life and television don't match up. Real life, you have real body bags coming home. Real life, you have families destroyed. Real life, you have drug addiction. You have homeless veterans. You have veterans committing suicide at the rate of, I want to say, 21 per day. That's a crisis. And we've got a presidential candidate who's willing to do something about the crisis. And you've got a media doing this, like the first paragraph. What? Who's Tulsi Gabbard? Oh, yeah, she's that anti-war crazy. Yeah. Jill Stein, too. She was another anti-war crazy. Bernie Sanders, you know, a lot of these, experts think Bernie might cave in on some of this stuff once he gets in office and he's confronted with these generals who will intimidate him, and the deep state itself will talk him out of the things that he wants to do. Whereas I think it's going to be really hard to talk Tulsi Gabbard out of doing what her key platform item is no more foreign entanglements. Just like Washington and Hamilton. Tulsi Gabbard is more like George Washington and Alexander Hamilton than anyone else in government right now who's in a high-profile position. She's got more in common with them. They understand that this was the farewell address. Washington was saying goodbye. Here's the first president of the country saying, hey, we should be involved economically, which means obviously not putting sanctions on these countries that need us, and we should be involved with peace. But we should not be in there, being the world's police. Staying neutral, staying out of feuds between other countries. That's what Washington and Hamilton were advocating at the end. And Tulsi Gabbard is very close to those views. And she's also an economic populist as well. So all the money that we would save on, from fighting the warfare state or employing the warfare state, that money would come back to the citizens to do as they see fit. And if that's better education, better health care, Medicare for all, public college, $15 an hour living wage, as time goes on, that $15 number is a basic number. It really isn't a high number. It's a basic number. And you need a living wage. And, I used to kind of mock that stuff when I was more to the right on some of these issues. Not anymore. So in any event, this article from the LA Times, very important, talking about the Great Rule. And Tulsi Gabbard, she's an advocate for the Great Rule. And we need the Great Rule again. And we need to stick up for the Founding Fathers when they're right. I know it's controversial because of slavery and so forth in those days. But here, foreign policy, spot on. I don't know how you get more correct than Washington and Hamilton here in 1796. So, all right. See you soon.